Welcome back to part two of my interview with Emmanuel Jambo, photographer extraordinaire. In this session, Emmanuel, I want us to look at the concept of entrepreneurship or being self-employed versus being employed, and at what point did that shift happen for you? Did you always know that you were going to be self-employed, or did you have it in your mind that you were going to work for a little bit and then branch off on your own? Tell me a little bit about that.
When I started at first, I somehow, when I just locked it in my head that I want to be a photographer full time, I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be a freelancer, which it don't necessarily mean that I have a studio, but I could be. I had in my own apartment, I had a small studio, and I was shooting guys in the apartment.
Where you lived, in your
where
house?
I lived in Atlanta,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So when I moved here, and then I was working with True Love and at a magazine, I was a freelancer. I wasn't working for them full time. Even though that's what's the whole idea in the beginning, but I just felt like I just want to be a freelancer. I wanted, because part of the idea was sold to me like, we gonna travel around Africa, and I really wanted just to go around Africa anytime I can.
So who sold you this idea that you're going to travel around Africa?
It was Ayunga Paulo.
Oh yeah.
We became friends.
Right.
My guy, yeah.
Okay.
So so I wanted to be able to do that.
To have that freedom.
Yeah, and then I didn't want it to just to be like oh, he just only a magazine photographer but like you just only shoot covers or fashion. I want to shoot some other things. I want to shoot weddings always.
It was always people, though. Did you ever have this thing where you wanted to be a photographer for inanimate objects, or were you more focused on the human element of photography?
Later on in life, I started focusing on human part, like which is portrait, fashion, weddings. But yet, I still shoot some other. Like if it's of interest to me, if I love it, I'll shoot it. Like I still love to shoot buildings and landscape and wildlife too. But it just have to be on that, have to be that moment have to just get me, and I'm there. So yeah, so being a freelancer, so not necessarily you have to work for a company.
Okay.
You can start by yourself if you have the mean. If you don't have it, you can always sometimes you need a platform. You need a platform. Yeah. So
very true.
A magazine will give you a platform.
Absolutely.
A studio will give you a platform.
So would you say that if you did not have the benefit of that platform and you just came in as Emmanuel Jambo by himself and you started walking around knocking on doors asking, yo, can I take a picture of you, would it have worked?
It might not have worked.
Right.
It might have taken 20,
much
30
longer.
years. Yeah.
Right.
But magazine, Yunga Paula, Karen Mandy, Connie, these guys, they saw my work and some other magazines too. They, through True Love and Drum and Adam Magazine, some other people will look at your work in the magazine and they will call you, whether it's corporate, Barclays, Stan.
Wow, interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you now, of course, what you've highlighted is the importance of having a platform and a networking platform. A networking platform is very important for creatives to make it. So now you're making this transition from fashion and art and all of this into the corporate sector. You mentioned a couple of corporates. How was it? How did the corporate scene accept you as a photographer? And would you say that there might be some perception issues? Because when people think of corporate, they think of this look, this clean cut and so on. And so, tell me about your journey to acceptance in the corporate space.
I would say mine was a very very funny experience. Like we talked about it earlier, the corporate was, a lot of it was controlled by expats. Okay. So my first shoot, I remember, like one of the biggest corporate, which is Barclays Bank, my first shoot with the board of directors, they were shocked in two things. I came with torn jeans and dreadlock.
Yes.
So it's not the normal typical corporate look.
That's right.
Second thing was, as you can see, I'm black,
yeah.
So actually the chairman of board of directors basically gave me a hug and like, finally my brother is taking my photos.
What?
So that means it was controlled for a long time by expats. So
so you basically pioneered and in some respects, especially in corporate Kenya, you broke barriers in terms of the perception that people had of, photographers.
Yeah. So it's but then we go back. Then I guess with time too, with time are changing. So I think corporate, they're more relaxed, you know, and they're accepting. They're accepting. We even make jokes. I remember one of the board of directors, and I was telling him, I'm like, can I come and be a board member? And he's like, yeah, sure. Just cut your hair. You have to get rid of your hair.
and maybe the torn jeans.
Yeah, and maybe the torn jeans. You have to wear a suit. But the acceptance definitely changed. Like now, they kind of like they accepted that creatives are their own beings. They just they dress the way they are, as long as as long as you're professional.
And I love that point. Creatives are their own beings as long as they're professional. And this is one of the main issues with creatives, is the fact that, because you're so expressive and into your art and your expression, sometimes the line between doing that and being disciplined enough to now put the work in.
Yep.
Because in this life, you need, in order to make it, it's not just about the art, right? I'm assuming, and this is maybe where you can clarify, how much work goes into becoming successful? And I mean the stuff that is not related to photography. How much of the other stuff is important, and what do you have to do to make it?
It's very important. It's a very important point. You have to let go. Yes, you're an artist, and you have your own, mood and stuff. But if you really want to make it big, or like want to, get into the commercial market,
pay attention, guys.
You have to let go of your ego.
Okay.
And and you have to put in a lot of work. You have to. You
got to get up.
Like I tell a lot of guys, it's like you can be the best photographer, and this actually this advice was given to me by my first mentor. Like, you can be the best photographer, but if you show up late, who's going to take that photo? Who's going to see that photo? Because you didn't take it.
There we go.
Yeah, because you missed it. So now,
time management.
Exactly, time management. The way you talk to people,
the way you speak,
delivery on time,
right?
So it's there's a lot of hard work, and then go and exceeding the expectation,
right?
Like that goes to like expectation management, like, so there's a lot of work that put in it, not just because you are good guitarist, good photographer, good painter. That's it. You're just gonna succeed.
Right.
There's a lot of
your art is gonna sell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because nobody will wait for you too long.
Right.
Because there's the next talent coming through. So you have to put in a lot of work.
Those are some really excellent points. And if I look at many of the artists now, people who are either actors or musicians or photographers or whatever it is, many of them have this assumption that all you got to do is show up with your art and that's it. And you've obviously explained that you got to put the work in. There are other things that come with it. Now, how does one know their worth as an artist? Because I can, you mentioned that you got your first wedding paycheck was $800, and did that set the standard for you? When you came back to Africa, for example, when these magazines approached you, how do you quote them? How do you quantify your worth? Is it a question of experience? Is it a question of you just deciding this is what I'm worth and that's it? How do you do some market research in terms of what the local guys are getting paid? How do you do that?
Yes, definitely it's the market research, definitely. And because if people know you somewhere, somewhere else nobody knows you. So even actually, my first wedding, I got $800.
Right.
A year later, after I moved here, my first wedding here was $40K, which is $400.
Right.
Just because the person liked my work, but then the budget wasn't there.
Right.
But then now I'm thinking on the long run.
Right.
It's like through this wedding, and then there's some other things too. When you come with photos from a different country, I don't know, for some reason the Kenyan market, they want to see Kenyan faces, like,
okay.
oh, a wedding in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, you could have done some weddings, so, you know, someone would like, oh no, what have you done here?
Okay.
So that's a good move for you to, like, you know, even if you take
build your portfolio.
Exactly.
Right.
Build your portfolio, take a pay cut.
Right.
But on the long run, it will get you some other jobs. So I did that, and I did another wedding. A friend of mine, she's a wedding planner, Yvonne Okwute from Atlanta too. She moved back, and she told me that, okay, there's this wedding that they already have the photographer, but just come and take the shots.
Right.
Just come for an hour. They
already have a photographer, but just come in, take some shots.
I spent like 2 hours. They called me after a week. I gave them the photos. They're like, now they want to use all my photos for the album. Wow. They don't want to use, you know, the other guy. Which now through this one, now everybody, like, she is going around. She's giving me free publicity.
Right.
But everybody looking at her album and talking about, who's this guy, who's this? I was like, this is the guy named blah, blah, blah. So I have done that for free. The other one I've done it for 40K only, but I've got thousands of jobs. You know?
That is such important and useful advice. Sometimes it helps to take a step back, take a lower pay or even no pay at all, and just make sure that you have a plan, you have a long-term strategy that will say, you know what, I'm doing this to build my portfolio to get ahead. And now, you mentioned something that is very close to my heart, which is how you speak to people. Because on my channel and in my work as a soft skills trainer and coach, it's all about how you relate to people. Does that matter in the creative industry? And you know, do you think that people will call you back if you were, you know, aggressive and, you know, hey, you know, I'm here, I'm the photographer, do you know who I am, that kind of thing?
Definitely. That you see, that goes back to the whole, I think maybe the different culture.
Right.
Maybe, you know, maybe it's my background, my upbringing. We lived in many different, you know, Sudan, Egypt, the States. You pick from many cultures, you know, how society relate to each other. So in my case, I kind of took that and put it into my work. You could be a good photographer, you could be a good guitarist. The way you speak to people, the way you interact, the way, like, I always, like, when I have a subject, and you mention, you know, something like, oh, I'm the photographer, or I'm the director, at the end of the day,
the big man syndrome.
Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, people want good quality work, but they want to enjoy it while they, you know, if it's a wedding, if it's a photo shoot, a model photo shoot, a magazine shoot.
Yes.
I came and I heard some stuff about some photographers, probably, because the European, they were talking bad to the model, the subject, like, you know, I was so shocked.
Being rude to them and whatnot.
Yeah, why are you being rude to the subject? You know, the first thing I do, actually, even if I never worked with this subject before, crack a joke.
Right.
You know, break the ice.
Break the ice, ease the tension.
Exactly, you know, they feel comfortable. The best result, you know, is to make the subject, when, you know, like, you know, when they feel comfortable and welcomed and appreciated. That's the best thing. So it's definitely the way you speak to people, you know.
So you've obviously benefited from a lot of the cross-cultural influences that you've had everywhere that you've moved and worked, and now you've moved from being Emmanuel Jumbo, the guy who has come in and has networked, and now you have built a brand. You know, you've worked with some of the biggest names. I mean, from the president of Kenya to, you know, serious individuals, governors, boards of directors, and this sort of thing. Tell me a little bit about, you know, if you had some advice on a creative trying to build a brand, what would that be? How do you get that kind of access? Obviously, we've spoken about networking, but what else is it? What else can you offer in terms of advice? Yeah,
so that will go back to networking, right networking, and delivery. You know, delivery of your work. That's what I believe that's the biggest thing for your brand, you know. And we spoke about how you speak to clients, which is customer service, you know, exceeding expectation, managing expectation. That's a big part of the brand. And
what about publicity? What kind of publicity have you used in your journey? Like the internet, for example. Has that been useful?
we are so lucky that we started the business, or we live in this era of the internet. You know, we have free publicity. Back in the days, people, you pay for the local newspaper, you pay for the magazine. Now, so the first thing that I used, I remember it was Facebook. That's the first thing.
Okay.
And then you can have a website, because there's always a local Google search engine. And then now you have Instagram, you have some other, you know, forms of communication, YouTube. So I use that to build my brand, even though I still like one-on-one. I still, which I call word of mouth. This is one of the best, you know, referral. This is the best. Like, till this day, I always tell everyone that when I deliver this work today, I want this client to go talk to at least 1,000.
There we go.
So each one from that 1,000, one go talk to another 1,000.
That's it.
You know, so
the multiplier, exactly. The multiplier effect. Yes.
So you basically, this is how you build your brand, and that all goes to like your looks, the way you interact with the client. You know. You
strike me as a very calm, patient person. Is that true, or am I just picking up my own vibe?
No, I think you're right. Sometimes, you know, sometimes you lose it, but you got to control yourself.
Yes.
I mean, you have to go to. But I'm blessed with I guess it's some sort of skill that I have a bit of, maybe a lot of patience, and I'm a joker.
Right, you got to have a sense of humor.
Yeah, you know? I'm a big-time joker, so this kept me going, like always with client, with my assistants, with, you know, people that I work with. It's always a fun. I make it fun, good environment to work.
That's a really good point, because for most creatives nowadays, there's you know, because of the pressure of trying to make it, and I mentioned patience, and alluding to your point of, you know, you use humor to be able to cope. Most creatives, because of the stress of I need to make it quick, you know, I'm trying to do this, but I'm still stuck. I'm still broke. I haven't gotten my big break. So they turn to drugs. They turn to all sorts of things to help them cope. Tell me a little bit about how you cope with pressure, how you deal with crazy clients, how you manage, you know, that kind of madness in the industry.
Yeah, art, for some reason, there's always, they go hand to hand, art and drugs. You know, I'm glad, I'm blessed that I've never, you know, I use some stuff that people maybe consider drugs, but it's not drugs yet.
Sure.
but I've never got into hard drugs. You know, I you shouldn't put pressure on yourself. Set goals, yeah.
Set goals.
Yeah, set goals. You know, but let things flow too. You can be a bit, like, just a bit pushy, just to like deliver on time. You know, showing up on time, all of that.
The fundamentals.
Success will come. You always have. I'm just like anybody else. I had a turning point in my life, in my career, that is set me apart. But you don't have to put pressure on yourself too much. You don't have to go to drugs. You don't have to do all of that.
Right.
Do the hard work. Do the hard work. If you spend all your energy thinking when I'm gonna make it, it's not gonna happen. It's just an illusion. Like if somebody see me right now, they might think, oh, I got successful in 6 months. No,
it took time.
It took time.
Right.
You got to put in time. You have to put the hard work. It will come. You know, there's no need to think that you want to be famous. You want to be rich. You love photography. You love music. You love art. Do it. You know, things come with sacrifice. You don't have to drive that car. You don't have to live in a big house. We all came from nothing. You know, I had my own place in the States. When I moved here, I stayed with my sister. I didn't come in and be like, oh, I have to get my own place. No.
Right.
Stayed with my sister. I was driving her car.
Right.
I was driving her car.
So you sacrificed.
Yeah, you sacrificed.
As your journey has progressed, are there other things that you've sacrificed? So, for example, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, there was, in the public relations space, there's a lot of time and weekends and events and nights that you're away from your family, that you travel and so on and so forth. have you had to sacrifice time away from family? Have you had to sacrifice? What other things have you
absolutely sacrificed? I still sacrifice, you know, like friends or family events, some weddings or trips that I cannot make it just because I have to work. You know, I put work first. You know, I sacrifice. When I was starting first, you cannot. Any business when you start first, especially I will talk about photography. When starting as a photographer, you sacrifice. Let's say, for instance, I can buy this new car. Let me buy a used car, so I'll be able to buy equipment. I cannot afford to have an assistant right away.
Right.
I'm still trying to make it. So now I have to carry my backpack heavy. Then I was diagnosed with a pinched nerve.
Oh wow.
Yeah, from carrying equipment while working for 10, 12 hours. Exactly. That comes as part of like one of the biggest sacrifice that you have to put.
So people see you out here thinking Emmanuel Jambo is able to take pictures of the president. They don't know what went into that.
They don't know. They don't know what went into that. Yeah, like, for instance, the working with the president, it goes way back. Like, first time I took his picture, he was a minister of finance.
Right.
First time I met him, I shot his brother's wedding.
Right.
I've shot some other family weddings, you know. So it goes a long way. The minute, you know, they decided he's running for presidency, first person they thought of, they called me, you know. So
it's like
they
called me.
Yeah. So it comes with like years of work, of building a good relationship. You know, people always want to work with you because they pleased to get your product and they are pleased to be around you. You know, so
you have to be a joy to be around.
Yeah. Through a lot of people that I met, you know, and then I've done some good work for them. I was introduced to the son of the president of Zambia.
Right.
Yeah. Before you know it, he called me one day. He's like, "Yeah, can you travel to come do some work for? He's running. We want portraits."
Right.
I traveled. Went to Zambia. First thing I remember, I called my mom, and I'm like, I called her from the state house there, and I'm like, "Mom, I'm calling you. I was having tea with the president." And he excused himself to go and talk to the Congolese, to the president of Zaire, of DRC. He excused himself.
It's like, I know you got to talk to your mom. That's important. So let me give you some space.
You know, so you kind of like, you joke now with your parents. Be like, you know, at one point you guys wanted me to be a doctor. You wanted me to be a lawyer.
Thank you.
You know, but now look, I followed my passion. I worked hard on it, and I'm calling you from the landline of the State House.
Mama, I made it. Literally.
Protocol came pick me up. Protocol dropping me while a plane is waiting on you. That I didn't have to be a doctor. I didn't have to be. I'm not saying you can be at top of your game as a doctor, but this is my passion. You know, I'm getting mine.
You're getting yours. And you know, this is so incredible because and as we close, so as far as you're concerned, is there hope for the creative industry in Africa, from where you sit?
My brother, there is a big hope. There's a big hole that we have to fill in all as Africans, because I think we've always been creative. We always look at the fashion, the sense of fashion right now in Europe and the US. If you go back from the haircut to the rings, the clothing, everything, it's always come back to Africa.
It's inspired by Africa.
Africa.
Yeah.
So music. Yes. Let's not forget instrument, all of that. So somehow I think creativity, we had it in our gene.
Well, you are certainly leading the way, my brother, and for sure, you know, this is. I feel like as I meet you now at the peak of your powers, or maybe you haven't peaked. For me, seeing you like this and knowing that you are leading the way in terms of how we as creatives in Africa need to be pushing forward and taking advantage of the environment around us, it really is very inspiring. And I want to thank you so very much for this. I'm speechless. You know, listening to Emmanuel's story has left me completely certain that the future is bright for Africa. It's bright for creatives. If you are not inspired by this, then really, guys, there's something that is amiss. But I hope you enjoyed this session with Emmanuel. All I want you to do is get yours.